A native son of Atlanta, C.T. Martin was educated in Atlanta public schools, graduating from Booker T. Washington High School. Martin would attend Shaw University in North Carolina before returning home to earn a master's degree from Atlanta University. Martin was quick to answer the call to community service. The years 1979 through 1981 were dark and troubling times in the city, and a young C.T. Martin stepped forward to serve on the Missing and Murdered Children's Task Force. In 1990, Martin's activism led him to City Hall as he was elected to Atlanta City Council, representing the city's 10th district for the first time. It was the beginning of one of the longest tenures on record for a council representative. Martin served on the City Budget Commission and chaired committees for human resources, public safety, and transportation. His passion for economic development in his district led to the formation of the Martin Luther King Jr. Drive Merchants Association. The ongoing reimagining of the MLK corridor is part of Martin's legacy. C.T. Martin left City Council in 2017, the same year that the $27 million Natatorium and Recreation Center in the Adamsville community was renamed in his honor. It is an enduring symbol of C.T. Martin's commitment to the youth as well as the seniors of the 10th District. C.T. Martin passed away May 8th at the age of 84. He will be remembered as an activist, visionary, and mentor, but most of all, C.T. Martin will be remembered as the Dean of Atlanta City Council.
One, two, three, cut.
Hooray!
This is called Centennial Yards, formerly the Gulch, and of course this whole development was passed in 2018 by the Atlanta City Council. So this is one of the first pieces of development. There's about 15 different parcels that will eventually be developed over the next 10 to 15 years. So the first portion here is at Ted Turner Drive and Peter Street, which is in the Castleberry Hill neighborhood. And there's 162 apartments that have been rehabilitated to its natural historic beauty. So this is an old building that was probably built somewhere around 1910. There are studios and 1- and 2-bedroom apartments. So this development is actually the gateway to further development in Southwest Atlanta. Castleberry Hill has really been flourishing along with other areas in Southwest Atlanta. We're just very excited about the development that's happening in this area. It's going to anchor this end of the lower end of downtown Atlanta from Marietta Street, coming back to Castleberry Hill and going further southwest. So this is something that's very exciting, and we're looking forward to more development that will take place.
We're out here downtown today celebrating the completion of 4 projects that were voted on during our Downtown Decides participatory budgeting process. And we're riding a bike from one location to the other to do a ribbon cutting at each of the 4 transportation projects. Some of the projects we're celebrating today are new bike lanes in the Central Business District, the painting of an island in the middle of the road yellow so people can see it, and some new trash cans in the Sweet Auburn corridor. This is the direct result of citizens participating in this program. This is the first time we've done participatory budgeting in Atlanta, and it puts the power directly in people's hands on how tax dollars are spent and we're just thrilled with the response and the success of the program so far.
Chastain Park is the largest park in the city of Atlanta. This is the last piece of the Chastain Park path, and it's taken over 25 years since it began, and we are here at a groundbreaking to celebrate this last piece getting ready to start. You know, the phrase, it takes a village, well, it certainly takes a village here. There have been lots and lots of organizations who have helped make this happen. I think there are over 500,000 people and probably about 250,000 dogs that use the path each year. It's an asset that is used by many, many people, from young people walking along to people on bikes to people running and exercising and folks coming after work to enjoy a stroll in the park. And the path has really been a catalyst for revitalizing the park, and so lots of park partners here today with NYO and the horse park and the pool, and it's a wonderful time to celebrate together.
Today we're here for an unveiling. We're unveiling an urban farm, one of the biggest urban farms that will be based here in District 3. And we're here to address the food insecurities that this district has faced for decades. And I think what's so innovative about this idea is that we've partnered with Washington High School, with Greenleaf Farms. We're going to be partnering with the American Heart Association to bring together an ag STEM program that's going to cultivate new, young, fresh blood in urban farming. That's going to really be focused on how we can move together as a community in addressing food insecurities within Atlanta. It is time that we take action in our own hands and we start cultivating innovative opportunities like an urban farm, like a grocery retail model where we can pipeline produce into the communities and really help lift up and support our residents.
This is our annual Eco Depot. We do this once a year out here at Charm. We used to do it at Turner Field, and we did it one year, the very first year we did it at the Civic Center. But this is an annual day where you can get rid of those unwanted, but the things that you know your gut says, don't throw this away, but I can't put it in the garbage and I can't put it in the city's recycling blue bin. So this is the Center for Hard to Recycle Materials. So people are out here today, they're bringing their styrofoam, they're bringing their tires. We've got neighborhood tires that are coming, you know, where someone dumped them. We've got tires that are coming. All of your old electronics, just like when you have that old electric toothbrush that died, your old cell phone that died, you know better than to put it in the trash or the recycling. So you bring it out here to Charm. It's in the springtime, which is so proper for spring cleaning, because then you don't throw out that old paint can that's got paint in it. You don't throw out whatever the Raid bottle that you lost the lid to. You can bring them here and we will properly dispose of them. And everybody is showing up. We've got, the outpouring of people coming out to recycle their items properly is just amazing. Look at all these people. I'm so happy.
Member Jennifer I. The time is now 10 a.m. on Friday, May 14th, 2021, and today we are starting day 3 of the City Council review of the Mayor's proposed fiscal year 22 municipal budget. I'm going to be joined a little bit later by my Vice Chair, Howard Shook of the Finance Executive Committee. I know that Council members Marcy Collier-Overstreet and Matt Westmoreland are on the line already. And I think people are just continuing to call in right now, and we'll be cycling in and out as their schedules permit. Councilmember Madeline Archibong, I see, just joined us, and I will recognize others as as I get a notice that they are on the line. For today's schedule, we're going to start with Public Works in this 10 to 11 slot, followed by Transportation at 11. We'll go until noon with Transportation, then take a short break for lunch and do Watershed Management at 12:30 for an hour, and then Customer Service ATL 311 at 1:30. And we do try to stick to those time slots just because that's what's been published, and it's easier in a remote setting. So if we finish a little early, we will, the line will go quiet until the start time of the next presentation. I believe Council President Felicia Moore has joined us, Councilmember Dustin Hillis, and Councilmember Michael Julian Bond. At the completion of each topic, council members will be able to ask questions. Please, council members, send me a message if you would like to speak, and I will recognize you. You should have all of the presentations should have been sent to you via email, but you can reach out to Ms. Kempson-Wright or Mr. Pace if you need a copy of anything. And with that, I am going to ask our Commissioner of Public Works, Al Wiggins, to introduce his team, and then you can jump into your presentation. Thank you for being with us this morning.
Good morning, Chairperson Knight and committee members. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Well, thank you for this opportunity to present the Department of Public Works fiscal year 2022 proposed budget. And I am Al Wiggins, the newly installed Commissioner of Public Works, and this will be my first budget presentation with the City of Atlanta. With me are members of my executive team, Keith Robinson, Interim Deputy Commissioner of Operations, Rita Braswell, Program Management Officer for Administration, Gayla Dodson, Program Management Officer for Solid Waste, Kanika Greenlee, Program Management Officer and Executive Director for Keep Atlanta Beautiful, and Steve Thomas, Program Management Officer for Fleet Services. The Department of Public Works portion of the budget begins on page 236 of the budget book. We have a substitute insert to provide as all of the information was not submitted in time for the budget book printing. The Department of Public Works has two core operational areas, solid waste services and fleet services. Solid waste services and fleet services are enterprise and internal fund operations, respectively, and each has its own designated fund. Solid waste services provide waste management throughout the city, and those activities include solid waste collection and disposal, street cleaning, yard trimming, and recycling collection, dead animal collection, illegal sign removal, and enforcement of illegal dumping, which is unsightly, safety, and an environmental hazard. The city's responsibility also encompasses the legal and regulatory framework that guides the continued maintenance of its foreclosed landfill, Key Road, Cascade Road, East Confederate, and Gun Club Road, in accordance with the consent order with the state of Georgia. The revenue anticipation for FY22 for solid waste is $66.9 million, with $56.3 million allocated directly to the solid waste department. The remaining amounts are allocated to support departments such as finance, HR, AIM, procurement, and non-departmental for indirect fee charge from the city. The Office of Fleet Services is responsible for the acquisition, maintenance, and disposal of the city's Atlanta motorized equipment fleet of 4,673 units and 756 components, totaling over 5,429 pieces. This office is also responsible for the purchasing and dispensing of over 3 million gallons of fuel annually. Additionally, the office partners with other city departments in the delivery of critical city fleet management services. The Fleet Services Fund was established for accounting for the operations and maintenance of the city's fleet of vehicles and motorized equipment. The source of income for the Fleet Services Fund is a chargeback recovery to city departments. The budget for the Fleet Services Fund is $37.8 million, with $33.8 million allocated directly to the Office of Fleet Services. The remaining amounts are allocated to support departments such as finance, HR, AIM, procurement, and non-departmental for the indirect fee charge from the city. The FY22 headcount for solid waste is 475 FTEs with 3 new positions added, 2 public works directors and 1 safety and security manager. For fleet services, there are no positions added, but a correction in the counts. The information is summarized on slide 1 of the presentation. Slide 2 depicts solid waste at work and collections. Use of the side loaders and pictures of volunteers in support of our cleanliness efforts. Slide 3 lists the major metrics for the department. For solid waste, we aim for 99.9% collection rate for each of our major services. Note that for the department to meet this metric, we commence no more than 1,000 households per week. In FY21, we did not meet this goal, most notably for yard trimmings because of COVID-related staffing shortages. We anticipate rebounding in FY22. We have experienced an uptick on illegal dumping over the past year. This will continue to be a focus area for us. Additionally, we will develop a schedule for right-of-way maintenance to focus on the gateways of the city and align our service to the arterials and collectors. For fleet services, we will continue to support our departments with preventive maintenance, compliance, and increase our turnaround time on repairs. Slide 4 shows the solid waste budget by major category. The total budget is $56.3 million for the year. 60% of the budget is personnel related. This budget funds all positions, including vacancies. Purchase contract services decreased from $1.8 million to $10,171,658. The department has historically been under budgeted in this line item based on revenue limitations. Challenges will remain in this area. Solid waste will also continue to defer facility upgrades and some post-closure expenses. The department needs nearly $12 million to fully fund contracts barring no emergencies. Major purchases in this area are transfer station, landfill remediation, yard debris processing, recyclables processing, facilities maintenance. Supplies increased by $340,000 this year for a total of $1,171,024, while we purchase general office supplies and small equipment, lawnmowers, blowers, etc. We increased the supply line items to accommodate COVID-related purchases for PPE, gloves, masks, uniforms, etc. Sanitizer and disinfectants. Also, both bin vendors, Auto Environmental Systems North America Incorporated and IPL Incorporated, increased their bin rates. The increase was due to increased material costs for resins that is used to construct the bins. Vendor IPL Auto. The capital outlay decreased to $0 because solid waste is not positioned to fully fund capital improvement or equipment. Replacement plans, however, the department now is utilizing capital lease agreements for heavy equipment, which I will address under the debt section. Interfund interdepartmental charges increased to $321,109, primarily for repair and maintenance. Solid waste beyond life cycle equipment is driving up the cost. The Office of Fleet Services typically works with solid waste services to provide a replacement plan to address equipment shortages. However, funding the plan is always contingent upon revenue availability. Debt service in FY 2018, the city on behalf of Solid Waste Services entered into 2 master lease agreements with an annual cost of $2,457,000 for the acquisition and replacement of heavy equipment. The department remits quarterly payments in accordance with the approved agreement, with the final payment due February 2025 through the capital lease programs. Solid Waste replaced and purchased 49 pieces of equipment, 43 rear loaders, 6 side loaders. The department added 100 $100,000 for lease purchase of 3 dump trucks to support special operations. Other financing reduction. The department budgeted $2,097,000 for the Solid Waste Management Authority bond repayment and the renewal and extension fund. Therefore, this is merely a transfer from department specific to the fund. The next slide is the program budget funded by the Department of Watershed Management for sweeping in the combined sewer area. The budget is $1,378,696, and the line item increases account for the full cost of services solid waste provides, to include the lease purchase of 3 replacement sweepers. For fleet services, the total budget of $33.8 million. Total personnel costs are $13 million, or 38% of the budget. This budget also fully funds all positions in fleet services. Purchase services is funded at $6 million. Major spending in this category is attributed to outsourced repairs, facility security, support for the fuel and maintenance system. Supplies is funded at $14.2 million, a decrease of $1 million for the current year. This is mostly due to reduction in fuel usage citywide. We will continue to evaluate this line item as operations become normalized. The final slide summarizes our plan for FY22. For solid waste, we will continue to build upon and improve our collections rate with close attention paid to illegal dumping and right-of-way maintenance. For fleet services, we will ensure fleet services provide quality preventative maintenance and repair service to support city departments. We will also continue fleet replacement plans to drive down current and future costs of fleet maintenance to departments. I welcome any questions at this time.
Thank you so much, Commissioner. Colleagues, and I do want to recognize we have been joined by Howard Shook. Anybody have questions for the Commissioner? This is Councilmember Winslow.
Good morning. I'm sorry, I didn't recognize you. I didn't see you on the line. Yes. No, you're fine. I'm on another number, so it may just not be recognizable. Okay. So for fleet services, we still got a lot of
Truck equipment
that we have to purchase for public works.
So, how are you able to handle that? After a while, you can only fix a vehicle so many times, and then it just goes to pot. So this is fleet services, right? Hello?
Yes, Councilmember Winslow. That's a great question. As you mentioned, several of our pieces of equipment are approaching the end of its life cycle. However, we are looking at purchasing some equipment through Recovery Act funds, if possible. But as we stated earlier, the revenues for the department and the actual operational costs, they actually have to match. So we're looking at the equipment that we need, establishing new life cycles, and we're working on an equipment replacement plan at this time. So until we have the complete study back for the fleet replacement plan, we won't make any recommendations for purchases at this time.
Okay. So I kind of thought that, because last year,
for solid waste, we did some purchasing.
And I wasn't sure if we were
going to try to do some more purchasing in this year's budget. And I heard you say we might be able to use maybe some of the CARES money. Is that what you were talking about? That comes from the federal government for something?
Or did I misunderstand that?
No, ma'am. So we did purchase 2 pieces of equipment yesterday. I believe that they may have been dump trucks. I'd like to have Rita Braswell, our PMO of administration, to address that question also.
Okay.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
This is Sheila. The council member, the department purchased, I think it was 49 pieces of equipment about 2 years ago. And as the commissioner stated, we were looking at different sources of funds to try and do some fleet replacements this year. We've not identified them so that when that occurs, we'll come back to council with that request.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
I won't get into
The solid waste fees, but
I really feel that if people know they're, going to that the service is going to continue to improve as we get more equipment, that people aren't going to be so critical of having to pay. Even if we have, let me ask you a question, street sweepers. I know we're only doing it once a quarter, but I guess I'm just kind of thinking off the top of my head. Sometime if we can get new equipment and show people, especially the commercial district, that we're back out there, with that equipment more often than we have been, the past, 7 or 8 years, that does make a difference. Because at one time, those street sweepers were really out in the, in the commercial areas, north, south, east, and west.
so I don't know if that's a question.
That's just more of a comment.
So street sweepers, how are those
vehicles holding out?
I'm sorry.
In terms of their life cycle.
So the purchase of the street sweepers is a joint venture between the Department of Watershed and the Department of Public Works. So I don't have the information in front of me directly at this time as far as the actual life cycle of the street sweepers. I could provide that information to you at a later time, but I have not received any concern from our fleet services director about the fragility of the equipment or the equipment approaching the end of its life cycle.
Okay, so they order together
when they do some of their
work,
which probably is a cost saving. So maybe I need to get with them. I just want to find out how many street sweepers there are. Maybe we need to order some more. So the solid
waste. Yes, ma'am.
So let me say this.
Okay, I want to say this to the public.
And I know we're in
an election year, but I think if we can give people more, okay,
street sweeping, more of that,
maybe more of something else on a regular basis, that whenever, because we haven't gone up on the solid waste fee for about 10 years. And so it puts a burden, on the department, that are doing the work. Okay. And so that's one of the other reasons the equipment's falling apart. Okay. We have to do our due diligence on our end too. I know this is the election year. We don't, want to talk about that too much, but, and maybe if we go up gradually as opposed to going up all at once, that's a sticker shock to people when we go up all at once. And I'm not really speaking to you. I'm just speaking out loud. Okay. If people see that we're each time, we may ask them for a little bit, but they're going to get additional services or more frequency of something that may help. So that's all I want to say. And thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes.
All right. I believe that, one, I want to recognize we've been joined by Councilmember Andrea Boone, and then there are a few more questions, so I'm going to, and Councilmember Joyce Shepard has joined as well. Councilmember Overstreet, I believe, had a question next.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you for the presentation, Public Works. Commissioner Wiggins.
Yeah, just a quick question. So, we're in a bit of a dilemma right now.
constituents are very frustrated about our recycling right now, the lack of. And I want to first, acknowledge that I know that we're headed in a direction as a city of being more clean and more green with, we actually have, benchmarks that we're trying to reach with being clean and green. And I cannot tell you how many times I'm asked, are we really moving in the right direction with that? And I want to make sure that our budget reflects us really embracing being a clean and green city. And right now, we just need a few more answers. I want to make sure that the budget reflects our priorities. And can you provide us with, in your budget for FY 2022, what our recycling looks like? When are we going to get back to normal with our recycling right now? These are dates that people are requesting of my office, and I just want to make sure that we're providing that information and being on message. I want to make sure that what we're doing is heading in the right direction as what we're saying we want to do and be. So can you speak on that just a little bit about the dates that we'll be back online with recycling, how important recycling is to us, how our budget will reflect heading in the direction of being clean and green?
Yes, ma'am. We're looking to return to our normal collection schedule immediately after Memorial Day. I believe the date is June 7th. And as far as the overall maintenance of the city as it relates to mowing and littering, we feel that at this time that the budget is adequate. We're actually looking to revise our strategy as it relates to mowing and littering by focusing on the arterial roads, making those the primary roads, instead of just using the quadrant system that we have in place now. So we'll have a little bit more information. The planning is still underway. We also plan on using resources from nonprofit organizations as well.
So did you say directly after Memorial Day? Would that be June 1st, or what do we, like, if we could just be specific with that so that my constituents are clear?
Yes, ma'am. As I said earlier, June 7th will be the day that we return to normal services.
Okay. I guess that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Overstreet. Let me look and see who I had in my lineup. I believe Councilmember Madeline Archibald is next.
Thank you. I wanted to know a little more about the illegal dumping and camera program. Do you have anything in the budget specifically beefing up that program or that initiative? Do you know what I'm talking about? Commissioner Wiggins?
Yes, so we're actually looking at purchasing additional cameras. The cameras that we currently have, the technology is a little bit older. I believe we have almost 20 cameras in our inventory at this time. Kanika Greenlee, the executive director of Keep Atlanta Beautiful, is actually researching additional cameras and new technology that we could use. The cameras that we currently have require a monitoring system, a cloud-based monitoring system that requires an additional fee for storage. And the technology is becoming antiquated. So again, we're looking at what technology is available and maybe in partnering with the existing camera system that we have that's used by public safety and the Department of Transportation as well.
Yeah, I was going to suggest that. And so my question is, as we look at this budget, where in the budget is there the dollars to allow for this? I think that's a really good deterrent in a really good way to have people be held accountable for the illegal dumping. So is that embedded in the budget in a particular line item that I
Yes, ma'am. Not as a specific line item. We were looking at doing that through just the operating budget at this time. But should we find out the cost would be so substantial, we probably would request an additional line item if necessary.
Okay. But one of the things I think the budget process allows for is to set priorities. And so I do think that the priority around deterring and stopping illegal dumping is a high one, at least in my mind. So just want to put a finer point on that as you look at this moving forward. So thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
That's all I have for now.
Thank you, Councilor Archibald. Next up, I had Councilmember Dustin Hillis.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Thank you, Commissioner Wiggins, for the presentation. I've got a lot on your plate with this department as the newly installed commissioner. First question is around fleet services. On that issue, I've heard a lot of issues from different departments about turnaround time at fleet services, other police, DOT, fire, what we talked about yesterday with the delays with fire trucks getting repaired. So what, and I've heard that there has, quote unquote, been recent changes made. So what changes have been made at fleet services to address these issues, and what in this budget further helps improve the service and efficiency at fleet services?
Yes, sir, Councilmember Hillis. I would like to kick this over to the Deputy Commissioner Keith Robinson, who is working with the Director of Fleet Services, Steve Thomas, who will be able to give you the specifics of the work for addressing the turnaround times for fleet service.
Good morning, council members. This is Keith Robinson. There's been several changes that we've made to fleet services. For starters, one of the changes that we have made to the actual department itself is we've installed brand new leadership at the department, from the PMO and to the deputy PMO leadership structure that's been put in place. There are several different initiatives that we have the department working on right. One of them is obviously to improve turnaround times, to really improve turnaround times, and also to evaluate our parks as well, too, in terms of turnaround times and parks. And also, in some instances, the turnaround times, or even rank and score the different vendors that we're using, not only from a park standpoint, but also in some instances where we may have to subcontract some of the work out as well, too. So we're doing a thorough evaluation right now in terms of our vendors. But more importantly, this is something that we've got extreme focus on. And I've got Steve Thomas on the line as well, too, the newly installed PMO for fleet services, if he wants to add anything else as it relates to some of the changes as it relates to specifically to the fire.
Good morning. This is Steve Thomas, Office of Fleet Services. Just to add to what Keith has already stated, we're also looking at modernizing the shops to increase equipment service time. We're looking at more specialized equipment as well as specialized training within all of our shops. This will prevent us from having to send more equipment out, which in turn costs a little bit more money to repair to the outside vendors, and we can repair that equipment internally, and we can get it in and out on a faster basis. As far as fire is concerned, we've updated and reorganized the fire shop. We've installed new leadership, both day and night shift. We've increased the personnel within the fire shop, and we're working closely with the liaison within the fire to make sure that all equipment is identified, all of the issues to the equipment is identified, and we prioritize those pieces of equipment to start to work a lot of those issues off. We've also brought in 2 new outside vendors to assist us with repairing the fire equipment, much like in some of the other shops. We just did not have the specialized personnel trained internally to be able to repair that equipment. And so it had to go out to outside vendors for repair. So we bought 2 new outside vendors on board, and we've already seen the faster turnaround in repairing the fire equipment. So there are several other things that we're trying to do, as well as recruiting. We're recruiting around the clock to fill some of those vacancies. Quite naturally, the more mechanics we get on board to work in the shop, the faster we can get equipment in and out. So there are a lot of initiatives that's ongoing, and I got a couple of good PMOs, one in the production and one in the business unit, that hit the ground running, and we will continue this effort to make improvements across the board.
Right, well, that's great to hear, and thank you all for those updates. So going back to the commissioner, what's in this budget for fleet services? You feel that it is enough to support these efforts and to truly get this improvement?
So the improvements that were mentioned by Deputy Commissioner Robinson and Director Thomas are at a cost-neutral basis at this time. They're mainly just a reorganization of staff and recruitment using existing funds, and just basically doing a deep dive and looking at how we conduct business. So the improvements, again, at this time could be done at a cost-neutral basis.
Okay. And moving on from fleet services and keeping with the theme of things and talking about solid waste, with my experience over the past month, which you and Mr. Robinson are well aware of, and issues, at least that I've experienced in District 9, someone have a hard time believing the year-to-date efficiency numbers on collections. But, those, I don't know what date those are through, but when this first came out, with we're staggering collections of recycling and yard waste, we were told this was going to go through, I believe it was April. We're past that now, and I've given a June 7th date, but just going off my experience and hearing the vacancy rates and the attendance rates, what is your confidence that, we're going to be back at full service on June 7th, given the experiences that I know I've experienced and, probably my colleagues have experienced with collections?
Well, Councilmember Hill, my confidence level is high, being that we're putting contingency plans in place should we have any issues with attendance. Although I don't anticipate any issues with attendance, we're looking at using the assistance of contract services if necessary. Again, I don't see any reason that we would have to do this. But as you mentioned, as far as the efficiency of sanitation collections, what we are doing now is we're hiring customer service agents that will work directly with DPW. We're also hiring quality assurance, quality control staff that will be out in the field performing audits of the work that's performed on a daily basis. So with those checks and balances in place, I think it will help us to work towards the efficiency levels that we put in place and improve areas where we have historically struggled with service delivery. So again, my confidence level is high. The team is committed to do whatever it is that's necessary to make sure that collections remain on schedule, even if that requires for them to operate outside of their typical scope and normal duties. So we're all committed to making sure that we return our services and that this venture is done successfully.
Understood. And lastly, just talking about driveway maintenance, we've heard what you have to say about that and heard concerns from my colleagues. my experience, these past 3.5 years on council, we've never gotten that right. And in my experience in working for the previous council member and being a neighborhood president, it hasn't been right in over a decade. Just for example, I called on a portion of some of the streets in my district last summer, and for 3 months, or 4 months rather, it said unaddressed, and I believe it was actually DOT that ended up cutting it when they were partnering with DPW to get some of this backlog done. I really hope that there's a true focus on improving our right-of-ways through delittering and cutting the right-of-ways. But one thing specifically I want to mention, and I'll bring this up in quarterly reports, and I brought it up in other budget presentations. When I first came on the council, we were told about a program that DPW was going to start, effort through the mayor's office to really focus on the gateways to our city. You know, roads that bring people into our city. For example, in my district, Marietta Boulevard, Donnelly Hollowell, other parts of the city, Hamilton and Moreland are examples, because these are used by people to travel to Atlanta, and when they come into the city, that's their first impression. And at least speaking to the two big ones in my district, Marietta Boulevard and Donnelly Hollowell, DPW has not done a very good job of even keeping those gateways in the city looking great. Are you familiar with what I'm talking about, this program to improve the gateways in the city, what do you see that, how do you see that advancing?
Yes, sir. I believe that you're referring to the Clean Sweep program. And again, my historical knowledge of that program is not that great. I'm operating off of nearly 2 months of experience. But what I have observed is that we need to improve our process. And we have approximately 150 miles of right-of-way of arterial roads and over 200 miles of right-of-way for our collector streets. We're really focusing on getting our primary roads mowed and delittered, which are our arterial roads, and just approaching it from a science-based perspective. So for an example, we are looking at the actual cost per mile or per linear foot of the cost of providing this work in comparison to the amount of staff that we have in place to do the work, in conjunction with the contracted services that we use to provide this service. By using that data, we could establish a priority system that could accurately reflect our staffing, our budget, and our availability to perform the work. Again, if the work is still underway, the planning is still underway, I believe that we'll have this plan completed within the next 20 days or so. And you'll begin to see some significant improvements as it relates to the cleanliness and the mowing of our right-of-ways.
Understood. And just speaking currently, and as we move into the summer, what is the percentage you would say of what we do in-house versus what is the contracted service?
I would say at this time, it probably will be a 60-40 split, probably 60 using FTEs, our internal staff, and 40% using contracted services. I actually had a call with one of our contractors yesterday to see what is their actual capacity, knowing that we are going into our full growing season. We're also looking at using growth inhibitors on the right-of-way to slow down the actual growth of vegetation. Much of what you see is probably not grass. Of course, the weeds grow quicker than the grass, and if we could apply growth inhibitors, it probably will be, not probably, it will be able to control the growth and the frequency of how often we're actually out there cutting our arterial roads. And as you're probably aware also, many of our arterial roads are the state's property, and it's been a challenge to get the state to come out and cut the right-of-ways as frequently as we would like for them to. And city staff, because of that reason, has taken on that effort and the responsibility of mowing state routes as well.
All right, Commissioner, thank you for all this information.
Thank you, Mr. Hillis. We're going to go to Councilmember Joyce Shepherd and then Councilmember Michael Bond after that.
Good morning, Commissioner Wiggins. I've talked to you on several occasions, and I'm welcoming us doing a ride through that we talked about. When I asked for questions, my colleagues have asked a lot of the questions that I'm concerned about also. And I heard your perspective in terms of how you're going to fix some of this. But illegal dumping is major in the city. Trash. And also when I say trash, I'm not just talking about people throwing out trash, which is another initiative that we need to be really trying to look at in terms of how do we get people to stop throwing trash on the streets and the right of ways. But more so, even trash that you see that I can't imagine. And I feel like this, it's like a broken record. I mean, I'm like a recording that I could just replay, where I'm continuously saying this to so many commissioners in the past, is that I don't understand how folks, in terms of your structure of department, how if I can ride by and see trash that's illegal or that has been sitting in the same spot for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, I don't understand why other folks can't see that. And I don't see any evidence of anyone actually dealing with it. So I call in a lot of calls myself to your department to say I have folks that that's what they do every day, is go out and ride around and look at trash and a lot of other things. But it's really, I'm challenging you that you have got to do something to change what's happening in our city. I mean, you know, Mr. Hillis was just talking about the promise that was made years ago in terms of, you know, major thoroughfares and gateways on communities. We've been talking about a lot of things that we envision as just things that we say is going to happen, but they never happen. And as proud as I am of the city of Atlanta, it hurts my heart when I drive through my community continuously to see trash everywhere. And just don't understand how we can not get this right. I would also say to you is, and I heard Ms. Archibald, I believe, guys, that we should go ahead and put some funding in for cameras, not wait and see unless you all can get to us a number of what the cost of the cameras are before we finish up this budget, so that we can, if you all would have the funding to put it in place, here's the opportunity right now for you to say how much money would we need for cameras for illegal dumping. And let's just see how we can put that into the budget. That's one thing that would help us tremendously if we could roll out a program like that. And then the other thing I challenge you with is looking again, going in, and I hear you saying you go in and look at your department and look at things in terms of how you can revamp your department in a way that's more accountability. I can't stress that enough. I'm so frustrated when I go to my neighborhood meetings and when I just drive my community when I see the trash, and I just don't feel like this department is accountable enough for what they do. So I'm going to stop at this point because folks have asked a lot of questions. And I'm sorry, I came in a little late, Madam Chair. So I know that your department is an enterprise department where, you know, you're supposed to be making X amount of money. What was the number, the crunch number that says in terms of what you have and where you are? And I think you're still behind in terms of your department, in terms of actually making it viable where you can actually take care of some of these projects. Was there a number that was given? I apologize, I came in late.
And I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Where are we in terms of your budget, again, in terms of the amount of money? And I know your enterprise entity should be making money too, and that we know for a fact that's not happening. But what was it? Is there a negative, and how are y'all balancing the budget? I'm sorry. And if you need to answer that for me later, because I don't want to hold people up. I'm probably going back over something that I was late coming into. But I do want to know where we are in terms of your budget.
And specifically with regard to the deficit, because I think that there are some payments from the general fund that have been having to go to support that. And Commissioner, I don't know if you have that number in front of you right now, or if that's something that you need to follow up on.
Yeah, I'm just interested in seeing where we are in terms of that.
No, I don't have that number. I don't have that number directly in front of me. I can provide that information. And if I understand you correctly, you're asking for the deficit for the solid waste fund as opposed to operational costs and revenues. Yes, ma'am. I can provide that exact number. I don't have it in front of me.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Give that information to me. Thank you. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Councilmember Shepherd. All right. Councilmember Michael Bond.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Commissioner, for your presentation this morning. My first question is in the vein of what Ms. Shepherd just asked us. How much, if any, stimulus funds are being used to supplement your budgets? Do you have that information?
No, Councilmember Bond, not at this time. We're still working with the Mayor's Executive Office to get that number. Of course, those funds will have to be shared citywide, and we're still working through that process.
Okay. Well, when that's done, of course, I'm sure everyone would want to know that. And also, getting back over to the vehicles, are you all still lease purchasing vehicles and for replacement?
That is correct. When we purchase large vehicles, they are purchased through a lease purchase agreement. Large vehicles such as our okay. What type of cycle? Are you all on different cycles for the different departments that for the different types of vehicles? Is it on an annual basis or every 3 years? Where are you at with that? So, yes, we are on different cycles for different departments, but the cycles typically coincide with the life cycle of the respective piece of equipment. So, the sanitation trucks, such as the garbage trucks, will have a different life cycle from a passenger vehicle. And so it's not based on a specific term. It's based on the specific use of the vehicle and the life cycle of the equipment.
And just to get it back, I'm skipping around because so many questions have been asked. A lot of my things I was concerned about was addressed. I'm just trying to go over my notes here. On the contracts for the cleaning, I want to underscore what everyone else has said about the general cleanliness and appearance of our curbs and roadways. I know you've only been on for about 2 months and we haven't had the opportunity to meet or talk one-on-one. I want to underscore with you the concerns that I've gotten citywide from constituents that the city has never been, or in recent memory has never been in such a state that it is in the appearance of not just roadways being cut, but the general cleanliness and the perception of the trash and the debris along our roadways. I know you said there'd be a 60-40 split with the contractors that you had. How long do you think that you will need those supplemental contractors? And in the spirit of increasing opportunities for smaller businesses, this is part two. The question I just asked is, one, how long do you think you'll need to use them, and how are you breaking out this curb cutting work? Is it just larger companies, or are you breaking it into smaller packages to allow smaller entrepreneurs to participate?
So that's a great question. As far as the idea of how long we will need the contractors, we're really facing uncharted waters right now as it relates to COVID has increased the amount of pedestrian activity and pedestrians walking down the street and the increase of trash. And so we really don't know how long the additional help will be needed. Again, we're looking at restructuring the way that we perform the work. And so the use of contractors, we're still finding out what is the best fit. But our approach today is that we know the arterial roads and our gateways into the city are the areas that are highly traveled and the areas that really need to be cleaned the most. And after we are able to get that situation under control, we'll focus on our collector streets. So again, we're looking at this from a perspective of the actual cost, the budget that we have in place, the staff that we have in place to perform the work, and the bandwidth of our contractors as well. As it relates to breaking the contracts up into smaller agreements, we have used smaller firms for work that they are capable of performing. Our focus primarily as the Department of Public Works is to make sure that we're within the guidelines that is set by the Procurement Department. So they have their criteria, and of course we'll follow the criteria that's in place by the Procurement Department. Did that answer your question, Councilman Bond?
Yes, and just one last thing. I know that there was severe staffing shortages over the last year, largely due to the pandemic. The CDC said yesterday, of course, those who have been vaccinated, of course, don't have to wear masks. Further confusing, to some degree, the state of affairs in our general society. But what is the status of the workforce as it relates to, I guess, vaccinations or defending itself against, the rigors of the effects of COVID on, the readiness of how many people you have available, et cetera?
So the readiness of staff due to COVID-related sicknesses or illnesses or just the isolation of employees has decreased significantly. I believe this week we only had 2 absences due to COVID-related sicknesses. And so it continues to be a struggle, going back to your question earlier about staffing, and especially during this COVID posture that we're in. We continue to deal with that, but I think we have made significant progress. We have had a few hiring blitz operations where we have conducted on-site interviews on the weekends. Again, that has been a challenge. Maintaining social distancing requirements, staff has done a great job with that. We're also working with HR to improve the efficiency of onboarding the employees who will perform the work in the areas of solid waste and right-of-way maintenance. And I think we have improved the process of onboarding employees as well. So again, it's a constant struggle, and it's not exclusive to the city of Atlanta. Our colleagues are experiencing the same issues. I think we're doing a better job than most at this point, but it is a very fragile situation.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. And Madam Chair, I yield.
Thank you, Mr. Bond. All right. I think our final question is going to come from Mr. Shook, because we're right at the end of our time period. If we go a few minutes over, that's okay, and I'll just let Commissioner Rowan know. I do think, Commissioner Wiggins, there are a number of follow-up questions, so we'll see if we can, staff will pull those all together in an email so we can make sure we get all those before you, and if we think that a little later in the budget process we need to, find another, 15, 20 minutes to get questions answered, we can do that, but we'll try to send them over to you in writing, what we've taken down today, and you can see if you can follow up that way. All right, Mr. Shook, why don't you close it out for us?
Yeah, okay, thank you. And just to piggyback on what you said, seems like in the last couple of budget cycles, the answers to council member questions seem to come in, the good news is that, neatly bound and organized, but they tend to come in either the day of or the day before budget adoption, which kind of renders the answers kind of moot. So hopefully, we can get these like within a week of asking. So, Commissioner, you've been here long enough now to probably identify a couple of the problems you now own that were perhaps under-described to you during your recruitment. I got a couple questions about one of them, and that's solid waste. Are there fee increases proposed in this budget?
No, sir. No fees have been increased this budget cycle.
Okay. Do you happen to know what the total current arrearage is in terms of accounts receivable?
No, we were preparing. I believe that question was asked by Councilperson Shepherd earlier. We'll have those numbers delivered to you.
Oh, okay. And if you don't have it in front of you, I'd like to know in a related question what the payment rate was for the last billing cycle.
The payment rate for solid waste?
Yeah, the bill collection rate.
Yes.
And then just briefly, as you know, the council raised rates after having not done so for a very long time, because some people then went to court claiming that the rate study on which those numbers had to rely was inadequate, so a new study was procured, which is, I guess, going on now. And so we're in a sort of a purgatory in terms of adopting new rates and trying to resolve this lawsuit. So nothing seems to be happening. You're now familiar with that situation. What are your recommendations?
Councilman Shook, that is an issue that I will have to defer to the Department of Law to answer that question. I don't believe they're on the line at this time, but as you mentioned, this issue involves pending litigation, and so we're very limited about what we can discuss on this particular topic.
I'm happy to. I thought about that last night. I am happy to line up an executive session to get a briefing from law, if that would be helpful, because I think a lot of the questions that were asked today touched on that a bit. So I can work with Commissioner Wiggins and the city attorney to find a time for us to get an update on the pending litigation.
All right. Excellent. Thank you. Sorry to put us over. I'm done.
All right. Thank you so much, Commissioner Wiggins. You did a great job. Your first year here, and public works always tends to be an area of the budget briefing where you get a lot of questions. So I will coordinate with you offline on finding a time that we can get a litigation update, and then I'll make sure you get all of the a list of the questions that are outstanding. And as Councilman Shook said, the sooner we can get answers back, the more we can keep the budget process running on the deadlines that we have set out for ourselves. So thank you and have a great weekend, and we will be in touch soon.
Thank you, Councilmember Hyde and committee. I look forward to working with you and addressing all of the issues and concerns that were brought to my attention today.
All right, great, thank you. Next, we are going to, it is 11 right on the hour. We are going to move to the Department of Transportation. I was not quite right this morning when I said we had 11 to 12. We actually have allowed 11 to 12:30 for transportation. And I know that we have with us this morning the best Department of Transportation Commissioner the city has ever had, Josh Rowan. And let me see if there are other council members who have joined us. I know that Councilor Andre Jenkins was dialing in. I'm not sure if he's on the line yet, but I don't see that anybody else is on the line, but I will acknowledge people if they let me know. So Commissioner Rowan, if you are with it, feel free to jump into your presentation.
Yes, ma'am, I am here. Madam Chair, that introduction was very kind, but it's a double-edged sword. One could argue I'm the best while simultaneously being the worst. So happy to have this position on behalf of the hardworking men and women of Atlanta DOT. We're pleased to present some good information today, and hope you all find this useful. So on slide 1, it's just a cover page. Slide 2. We've attempted to give a high-level overview of the department. If you look at last year, fiscal year 21, we were roughly speaking a $49 million department. The thing to also keep in mind are the renewed bond program and the T-SPLOS. So on a typical year, we're about a $100 million spend when it comes to transportation projects. We have a very strong operations and maintenance team that serves 13,750 customers through the various work orders we receive, and our team is headcount of 360 people. And so we talk a lot about the assets that the city owns and possesses, and it's very extensive. We're a broad geographic region, and we have quite a bit of inventory. And so when you look at it, things like 1,000 traffic signals, 54,000 street lights, we've done recently a street light presentation, so I won't belabor that point. The one I really like to look at is the 4,500 lane miles of roadway that essentially you could pave one lane to Los Angeles, California, and pave one lane back. And that's the road inventory we have within the city of Atlanta that we're responsible for. Moving to slide 3. This slide is actually a direct copy from last year's presentation, and we thought it was important because it shows that we're planning our work and we're working our plan. We start every conversation with a focus on safety. Safety is our business. That's the safety of the people who use the streets, and that's the safety of the members of our team. And so that's first and foremost in our minds. And so you can see I think we've done very well with. Maybe we were a little lean on the recognition side. I know I try to brag as much as I can, but I don't think we have done anything formal to recognize our folks, and we certainly need to do that. We've definitely provided growth opportunities, and I will say our team has performed quite well in this remote situation, and so very, very proud of the efforts everyone's put in. From an operations perspective, I'd like to give a special shout out to the team that's managing the right of way. Nuruddin and his team, they're really on top of things. We set out a goal to be much stricter when it comes to enforcement of sidewalk policy with developers and enforcing the various provisions of the permits with our utility owners. And so we feel like we've made very good strides in those areas and have more to go, but have really made a positive direction when it comes to how we manage the right of way and how we really conduct the affairs that are taking place in there. We talked about looking at all potential opportunities for transportation funding. Last December, did a presentation on that, and we're continuing, especially now with the federal emphasis on infrastructure spending, looking at opportunities there for the city to receive funds. So very important as we go forward. Our capital delivery team has realigned this year. It's just excellent effort from those folks. We had some projects that had kind of gotten stalled that are back moving forward. You saw that wasn't yesterday. It was Wednesday, but time's slipping on me. So in the presentation transportation committee, the wave of substantially completed designs on our renewed T-SPLOS program. So you're about to see quite a wave of projects going into construction. We talk a lot about the pavement condition index. We've got a lot of work to do there. Won't belabor that point. We've really done well with engaging the public through technology. We find we have broader reach through the use of technology. We've even had some fun. We're doing a monthly coffee with commissioner where we go to a local small business, and it sort of turned into a chat session, and may bring some guests in this next time around. But I think our first one had 3 people and our last one had nearly 50. So we're attracting a bigger audience, but we say it's like a good rock and roll band. If only 3 people show up, they're going to get the best show that they've seen. But we also learned that it's a combination of high tech and being present in the community. So we try our best to be physically present, walking and looking at the issues and listening. And then the last thing is we're going to continue, and you'll see a thread in this presentation, this emphasis towards insourcing more work. We've made hires that beef up our design capabilities, and we're also looking at investments and equipment that will enable us to in-house and insource more work. We're feeling that in some areas that it's probably better that we control more areas within construction. So if we move to slide 4, and that was last year. So let's talk about, well, those were our plans. These are some of the results. And so we've spent a lot of time talking about project prioritization and focusing on safety and equity and mobility, and really getting away from this kind of first in, first out model, or some areas the squeaky wheel, because it's really important that we start looking at return on investment with our infrastructure dollars. And you're going to hear us talk more about prioritization as we look at the various asset classes. Deputy Commissioner Doug Nagy had presented a pentagram that showed the infrastructure broken into 5 pieces, and we'd really like to start diving into the district level and create a scorecard where we can start looking at district-specific issues. The second bullet point, we've designed six additional miles of protected bike lane as part of the action plan for safer streets, and we'll continue implementation with that. This third bullet point, we measure this from Mayor Bottom's inauguration day, but we're almost about to hit 30,000 potholes, so 28,008 miles of sidewalk, and I think that one goes hand in hand with some of the discussions about our pavement condition index. While our team is working really hard to patch the roads and then keep them operable, it really shows the challenge that we have, that many of our streets have reached their functional lifespan. And so we need to be shifting and looking at how we start resurfacing and extending those lifetimes. We've had a good run, good success with our teams through COVID. And we said safety first, and everything we've done has focused on safety, and that goes from limiting our face-to-face contact, investment in PE, cleaning of our facilities, and some may or may not know, but we actually quarantined the entire team after the holidays because we feared the increase in the infection rate. And so we put our folks first and foremost in our minds, and I actually think when the day is done, we implemented an unwritten rule, which was if you feel sick, stay home. And that served us very well. And so really, really happy, too, to see how our team has been looking out for each other and has really come together as a team and has cared for and watched out for the well-being of their fellow team member. The next bullet point, the portion of MLK from Ollie to Northside Drive, that's substantially completed. We have some punch list work to do. The remainder of the project is looking towards mid to late summer for completion. So that one's on track and moving, and hopefully we'll soon be cutting more ribbons on that one to celebrate completion. And then the last thing has been we've been very adaptable in supporting other departments from Operation Clean Sweep to cleaning up after hurricanes and various storms. And so just a real shout out to the adaptability of the DOT staff and their willingness to pitch in where it's necessary. So moving to slide 5, let's talk a little bit about fiscal 22. We really want to build on the successes that we have experienced this year, and some important lessons have been learned. I was in a presentation one time when the CEO of Chick-fil-A made a comment that he had a name tag that said he was the CEO in training, and that they had learned that customers are more gracious when they think employees are in training. And so as we finish this first year of operations at Atlanta DOT, I've joked with many that I should really have a name tag that says Josh Rowan, Commissioner in Training. Our first year was good. We learned some lessons where we can, I believe, enhance and expand our service offerings. And maybe as your Commissioner in Training, we offer some of these ideas for fiscal 22. And so let's jump into those. We're
little light on safety resources. And so we're very happy to see that the positions that we have are funded. We plan to expand the safety team. The most critical position, I believe, is a departmental safety officer who's going to report directly to me, because we've got to keep the safety of our operations first and foremost. As we start expanding and are able to deliver more faster, it's really going to be important that we keep an eye always on safety. We had presented the students from Georgia Tech the second bullet point about the One Atlanta Light Up the Night Street program and street light program, and I think that's something that's a real kind of sets the tone for us. We want to dive into the data. We want to look at what are the best decisions from a citywide perspective, and then launch these in a more programmatic fashion. So we're very excited that we feel like we're going to hit a big area of need in one program, and estimating this will take about 18 months to deliver. But this is what you're going to see from us. I had also mentioned, fourth bullet point, that I'm going to be diving into this ADA lawsuit and really working to get my arms around that and understand that and see if we can't move this forward and bring things to a completion. I'm just really now scratching the surface. I don't have much to offer other than been doing a lot of reading and site visits so far. We want to talk and mention the resurfacing. We've got to get more pavement on the ground, so it'll be a trade-off, potholes for paving. Right now, we were very happy with the results we saw from the 2019 LMIG bids that just came in a couple weeks ago. 2020 is down in procurement, and 2021 will be ready by the end of the year. So 2022 is going to be and beyond will be some busy paving time, and that's good. The next bullet point, talking about speed tables, I know last year there was a list that carried over. We actually had some challenges on the procurement side, simply that we didn't get good pricing. And so that's going to be prioritized and moved forward into this fiscal year. So if you take the $500,000 that was budgeted for last year plus another $500,000, we're going to exhaust these backlog lists and start fresh on what we're looking at from a speed table perspective. I would share that we're also looking at a design for speed cushions for our collectors and our arterials, and we'll be having further discussions about the impacts of city code and the restriction of vertical deflection on those roadways. We believe there are opportunities to really, again, have a positive impact on some of our larger, busier streets through things like a speed table. However, when we're slowing cars down, we're also slowing Atlanta Fire and Rescue down. So we've been working on a design that won't impede them, but will impede traffic. And so more to come on that one. We want to get more aggressive with the striping. I know that's been a frustration for many. We are going to have a combination of really two. We're still working to have on-call resources, but the focus is going to be moving in-house. We're working with fleet to get the equipment we need, both in the long line striping truck as well as the walk-behind machines. And we believe that with the equipment we've identified that we can accomplish about a quarter of the city per year, touching up the thermoplastic striping, and that's going to be a big deal. Interestingly enough, that's actually a very, very important feature as we start talking about the future of technology and transportation with the connected vehicles and the autonomous vehicles, that the cameras need to be able to pick up those lane lines. So we'll be focusing on striping in the next year. We'll also finish the installation of the 25-mile-an-hour speed limit signs. We're about 40% finished. That's part of our Vision Zero, and that's moving forward. One of the things that's exciting to me, if you go to the next bullet pointer, the remote communications and maintenance of 100 signalized intersections through our TCC projects. We've been connecting signals with fiber optic cable and working towards having more remote control over the operations of these signals. We rely heavily in the urban core on GDOT and the RTOP program, but we want to be able to have more remote access and be able to adjust timings really from the central command office as opposed to sending a technician to the site. One of the areas, I'll get to trying to run quickly through this, with the change of administration, we've had an opportunity to discuss with USDOT the manual for uniform traffic control devices. And so we just completed a letter that we're sending with our recommended changes and a much heightened focus on safety. And happy to share more details on that with anyone who wants to talk about that. And then we've also started to centralize the grant side of our house. We have some strong skills in those areas and believe there are going to be more federal opportunities. And so we've actually invested in some process development that we feel will aid us as we seek and deliver federally funded projects. And then the last section here, the FY22 in-house services, I had mentioned it. We currently do striping, but we want to do more striping. And if we are able to achieve a quarter of the city per year, that puts us on a good rotation moving forward. The second bullet point is I'm beginning to wonder if, as complex as the requirements are for ADA ramps, if it's not just best if we have a specialized team that we teach how to do these. And that way we retain full control over the work that's in place. We've got some challenges right now with just how some of those are being installed, and we certainly have some challenges with some of our existing ADA ramps, but this is a real growth opportunity for us. So if we jump to slide 6, these are just some key points that really cut across all of DOT. And so I tell people it falls in 3 buckets. The first is safety and Vision Zero. The second is state of good repair. So our capital projects team is very focused on how do we find and implement the resources to improve the condition of our bridges, our streets, our sidewalks. And so another element in there that we're going to be focused on this summer, really we're going to be focused on immediately, is how do we deliver projects faster? And I had mentioned in Transportation Committee the initiative that it's a poor acronym, but I was taught we engineers need acronyms to remember things, but it's DAPL. Design, approve, procure, legislate, and execute. And how do we take a completed design and begin construction sooner? And we want to be in a position to be delivering more projects and be delivering them faster. And then the last bullet point to keep in mind is with the funding, but we're going to be talking about T-SPLOS too. And then our third bucket to remember is buses and transit. We're partnering with more MARTA, and we see a future with a safe, efficient transit system. And so the 3 buckets again are safety, state of good repair, and efficient bus operations. We're gonna continue to be focusing on those 3. Slide number 7. I won't go through this in detail, but this is just an excellent slide that shows our inventory and then shows the work that we were able to get done this past year, and quite a bit of maintenance work. And so just again, our team works hard to hit these work orders as they come in, and you'll see even we nearly 10,000 inspections within the right of way. So everybody's got a lot on their plate, and they're managing it well. Slide number 8 is a snapshot of our budget. I will just say I thought this was a very, very smooth process. I'm pleased with where this budget landed. Again, we were roughly speaking $49 million in fiscal 21, and for 22 we're at $53 million. So you're going to see vacancies funded on the personnel side. You're going to see an increase on the supplies, and that slight downward trend on purchase services actually signifies 2 things. One, some of the work that's going to be performed in-house, and 2, a lesson learned. We had budgeted for a snow and ice event and then didn't have one, and learned that we barely have enough time in the rest of the fiscal year to actually turn that money into a positive investment. And so we've worked it out, sort of different approach for snow and ice for this next year that won't tie up as much of our budget from the start. And slide 9 is a summary slide. I believe I've hit on most of these positions. These items, 78 fully funded vacancies, were a team of 360. I mentioned the safety director. I'm also going to be looking for a chief of administration to really look at how we optimize the interaction with our internal departments. The thing to remember on the supply side is a significant percentage of that, nearly 2/3, is what we pay for utilities. The contracted services section of the pie, it'll vary depending on the work that's going on. So what you'll see from us are are a battery of on-call contracts that we're in the process of procuring. We're also looking at using more cooperative purchase agreements. And then for a bigger project, they will be best value procurements that will be open to the contracting community at large. And then the last part shows our other costs, which are, they're as a percentage of the whole, they're a fairly small percentage, but generally it's vehicles and fuel. And so that is a snapshot of the Atlanta Department of Transportation. Tried to hold it to 20 minutes, and I went 22 minutes. So forgive me for the 2 extra minutes, but happy to take any questions at this point.
Thank you so much, Commissioner. And I'm going to give people a few minutes to send me a few seconds to send me a text and get in line for questions. On the striping, I mean, when do you think, that's great that you think we can do a quarter of the city a year. When are we going to get the right equipment to be able to start doing that? Because you and I have talked about this many times, but it drives my constituents crazy when they say, you're telling me there's not a single person in the city of Atlanta who can paint a white light on the street. So what is our timetable on getting started on that?
So, Madam Chair, we placed the order for the equipment. I will need to firm up the ETA on receipt. I don't know that specific date as we talk today.
Okay. I mean, hopefully
I'm anticipating summer. I'm anticipating summer.
Okay. All right. I have some other questions, but I will start going through the other councilors first and see if people cover my questions. I'm going to go in this order: Hillis, then Overstreet, then Shook, and anybody else feel free to send me a message and get in line. And I do want to acknowledge that we were joined by Andre during your presentation. All right, Mr. Hillis.
Thank you, Chairwoman Hyde. Thank you, Commissioner Owen, for the presentation. The first question I have is, what portion of the budget here that we see supports the streetlight expansion that was presented in transportation a few weeks ago?
So what we're actually looking at for the streetlight expansion is funding that's contained within our mobility trust fund. And it comes from fees that we receive due to abandonments. The other thing that we're looking at is advance paying for the engineering study. So we're working with Georgia Power to conduct the engineering in this fiscal year and using some funds that were unspent. So back to that snow and ice that I talked about. So the snow and ice piece from this year, the mobility trust fund, which is a separate account, and then the other piece is actually negotiating a deal where we're going to sell our 10,000 lights back to Georgia Power, and then use those monies to support the initiative.
Understood. Second, I believe you mentioned in your slide the backlog speed tables, and as we recall from last year's budget, that was taken out, but myself and Councilmember Boone did an amendment to add a $500,000 commitment, I believe it was, to funding speed tables. Yet here we are many months later, almost into a new fiscal year, and the contract is not in place. So a few questions. One is, how do we improve that efficiency? And I know that's probably a question that also needs to be asked when procurement does their presentation. And two, just using that as an example, and you could talk about any project that goes through procurement, but walk me through the timeline of when we adopted the budget. It started July 1st. So when does DOT start their process of getting this contract in place? When does it go to procurement? What have been some of the challenges specific to getting this contract in place when we have quite a large backlog of speed tables to be installed?
Certainly. So the thing to keep in mind, and it goes back to my my acronym DAPL. When you look at the timeline from a trigger package to essentially an NTP for construction, if things go well, that averages to be about 8 months. So I feel like we use the word procurement in two different ways. There is a procurement window that's about 45 to 60 days that produces a bid award, but then we have to legislate the contract and execute the contract. So we start in as soon as the fiscal year starts with the procurement. The challenge with this one, Councilmember, was the pricing that we received from the contracting community was much more than we were willing to pay. And so, in spite of our best efforts to put together a good bid package, in spite of procurement's best efforts to advertise this and get this on the street, the pricing was just not good. And that's when we looked at the cooperative purchasing side of things. And can we go find existing on-call contracts with other jurisdictions? We're also looking at things like having more than just the speed table on-call, having a larger on-call with more pay items that we can then get, I think, more competitive pricing. So this one came down to pricing. We actually did not accept the bid prices on this one.
Okay, so with that FY21 amendment, is that money going to be used in FY21, or is it being rolled over into FY22?
So there's no rollover from one fiscal year to the other. But what we've done is we've basically said the $500,000 will be tagged in this budget plus another $500,000 more. So we anticipate doing about $1 million worth of speed tables in fiscal 22.
And will that take care of the current backlog or the current backlog plus some, or where are we with that?
We believe it'll knock out the backlog.
Okay. But you don't anticipate it funding any additional warranted studied speed tables?
Well, I think what we're backing into is a good model where, we want to continue to study them and where they're warranted or needed. Start approving them and sort of develop this annual list. I think the approach is actually very sound, where we have a list from the previous fiscal year that gets funded moving forward and kind of do everything in a systematic way that way. So we've looked at what's the list from last year, the items that in this past fiscal year that have been approved, and we believe $1 million will address all of that.
Okay. Last question is about, I guess, potholes and maybe more specifically point repairs. So I've experienced some challenges in getting potholes filled, and then there are those locations that just have continued to be repaired over the years that obviously point repairs to kind of shore those roads up before we can do a full resurfacing. What is our point repair team right now? And given the wait time, does that thing look to be expanded, or where are we with that?
So the couple things to consider, and your district specifically, we continue to have a number of our resources supporting Operation Clean Sweep, and a good portion of those come from the street maintenance side. What we're seeing more of, though, and I think Bolton Road is a great example, that the repair work has been a series of Band-Aids through the year. And I'm thinking specifically of I had walked with one of your constituents about 3 weeks ago, and we're finding areas that need to be completely reconstructed. And so we're actually looking at can we be turning to the contracting community to come in and do this type work, because it's more expensive than we have the resources to do. There are many areas where there's asphalt paving on top of concrete paving, and the asphalt just keeps slipping. And so we really need to get in and dig everything up. So a lot of our maintenance challenges are bigger than potholes and bigger than point repairs. They're actually sections of roadway that have failed and really need to be repaired, I would argue, on an emergency type basis.
Understood. Thank you for that, and that's all I have. I just want to say thank you for your team, done an excellent job, and take it back to Chairwoman Ide. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Hillis. I do just have one or two follow-up questions on the traffic calming discussion. One is a little bit contracting more in general. I know we've had discussions in the past of, some of your thoughts on why we may not get, as many great contractors bidding at at a good competitive price on city transportation projects, whether that was a, history of slow payments, in days past or other issues. How do you feel like you're doing sort of overall with the, construction road contract community on saying, the city wants your business and we're going to be a good customer and come and bid on our work, at a good price?
Yes, Madam Chair, that's an excellent question. And I'll back up a little bit and set the stage for that. It was shortly after I started with the city, I had a long conversation with the executive director of the Georgia Highway Contractors Association and asked him, what's the issue? What's holding you guys back? We had seen several bids that would have a single bidder and just weren't real happy with those results. And what he said was there are really three areas. He said, number one, you don't pay your bills on time. Number two, your contracts are onerous, and we don't like those. And number three, we think your whole DB program just is too big of a deal to manage. We don't like that. And so I told him, I said, well, there are two of those I can work on. The third one is a non-starter, which is the DB program. We're forever going to be more progressive in our thinking about using that program. So that's right out of the jump. That's not open for discussion. But as we sit here today, our finance team is paying the bills in 30 days, net 30. I wanted to shout that from the rooftops. We're paying our bills in 30 days. That's huge. We're not asking. And we heard the horror stories. We worked for the city and we went a year and a half without getting paid. I've heard all those stories. Right now, if the work is done correctly and the invoice is submitted correctly, and I'll say that the correct invoice has been a big deal here in the past, but if the work is done and it meets the specs and the invoice is correct, contractors are getting paid in 30 days. People are getting paid. The second thing, the capital projects team has worked very hard to clean up our specifications, clean up our contracts, to make things look a little more like GDOT. And so what we've seen in the past couple of months, Madam Chair, is that we're getting more competition and we're getting better pricing. In fact, a couple of the larger contractors in the region, we've seen a slight decrease in their unit prices. And so that's encouraging to us. I would point to the LMEG bids that were just received. I hope I'm not saying too much, but we had good competition and we were happy with the pricing. I'll leave it at that because I don't know where we are with the evaluation. But I believe we're moving in the right direction. The big thing is just going to continue to be to focus on those two things, that we want to be a fair department. And my old boss, when I started my career on the contracting side, he always said, we just want to get paid for the work we do. And that's our attitude. You do the work, you do it correctly, we're going to pay you, and we're going to pay you as quickly as we can. The other piece that's interesting, and I'd like to give a shout out to Council and Councilmember Matzagai, is this Transportation Infrastructure Trust Fund. I think some of the old DPW projects were actually getting snagged at the fiscal year. If you imagine, you're just making up numbers, a $30 project over 3 years that you had to fund $10 at a time. It was a contract administration nightmare. So some of these artificial boundaries are being removed. I've followed back up with the Highway Contractors Association, and they've said we're liking what we're seeing. And if you look at our recent bids, you're seeing some companies who have said they would never come back to Atlanta are now bidding work again. Now, I would say they have some reluctant pricing, but they're now at least looking at our projects again. So that's a long answer to a simple question, Madam Chair, but that's an area we've spent a lot of time working on.
Okay, and do you think you're at the right, that's encouraging to hear. Do you think, except that we didn't get, great pricing on the speed tables, do you think you're at the right balance of what we do in-house and what we contract for? I know you said you're going to try to do some of the striping in-house. Do you think that there are other things we should be doing in-house, or do you think you have figured out, which bucket things should go in?
I would envision, think of this more as sort of an expansion to meet the need. We're going to need all of the above. So the big projects, we need for big projects, we need big contractors. We need the people with the equipment and the resources to get the job done. One area that we're very motivated about is to start unbundling some projects where we can, to have smaller scopes, so that we can then provide more opportunities for our diversity contractors. I'd really like to see more diversity contractors doing our work, even if that means new contractors forming. And then for us, if you look at the services we're able to provide, I think you'll see an expansion. So if you use striping as an example, our peer city in Seattle has 3 in-house striping teams, where we really have one. And so there's so much work to be done that we have to be capable of providing, I think, a broader scope in-house. And that's where I see the striping could be a totally in-house function. I really want to get serious about what we're able to do with our concrete crews, and when it comes to especially the demolition and reconstruction of our ADA ramps. I think that's a great opportunity to provide a direct benefit to the citizens, and something that we have enough demand there that's something that could be ongoing. I estimated the other day that if we had one dedicated ramp crew, that they would have work to do for the next 8 years. So, we've got a lot to do, but the folks that we have are very capable. I believe with the right investment equipment, we can do more quantity-wise, and we can do more scope-wise. So we're going to take that approach that you crawl before you walk.
Okay. And then my final question, and then I'll go on to my colleague, is not even really a question, it's sort of a comment. On the traffic calming and what how much budget we have on speed tables, can I just ask that, your team go around to different council members, because I think, there's been a little bit mixed messages in the past on, sometimes of doing a speed study, but then being told, we'll get to it when there's funding, and so legislation hasn't been done. Sometimes people are just putting in legislation to start the process, and I'm not sure that everybody knows the status of their request, of whether it came in through direct legislation or whether it came in for a request for a traffic study of, where its place is on the list. And I think all of us would appreciate just making sure we're all on the same page on where previously requested work stacks up.
Yes, ma'am, 100%. We will get that done.
Okay. All right. I'm going to turn it over to Councilmember Marcy Overstreet, and after that, Howard Shook.
Thank you, Chair and thank you very much, Commissioner Rowland, for that presentation. Transportation is my absolute favorite. It's my sweet spot. It's the part that I love about the job, but it's also where, the rubber meets the road, and people really don't understand us not being able to strike, especially when, accidents occur, and it's so hard to get that word out. So I am so happy to hear that we're nearing the end of us having to try to convince people that we're just not able to do it right now, especially when so many, incidences have happened just because of striping, especially around the Greenbrier area, which is, a mall, major thoroughfare, and Headland Road, and so many more areas. I am so glad to hear that that we're getting ready to fix this situation, because striping may seem simple, but it directs people. It really does put order on the road, and that's what we need. So thank you for that. I also would like to
speak about, your budget. And I understand that, sometimes, because I actually legislated, speed hump, was a co-sponsor on the $500,000, legislated to use it, was told that it's agreed upon and that it's necessary, so it's funded for the speed humps, and we still don't have them like on Blackboard. So I'm trying to, and that's like a year process already. I really want us to do just what Councilmember I just said. I know you said okay. I appreciate that. But I want to just make sure that the budget reflects what we've legislated, and that when something is funded, we know exactly where we are in that process, because we're tasked to send this information to the affected parties. And when we don't have the information, it makes us all look bad. That's the council member, that's, the city, that's your department, when I know that you have been nothing but informative, responsive, extremely intentional, hands-on. I mean, I agree with Councilmember I. You are the best commissioner, ATL-DOT commissioner that we've ever had. So I know that we can get this right. And I just don't want us to look like this to our constituents. And I want to be able to be, responsive to them. And, just want to let you know that. And when our budget allows, which it does, because it was legislated for FY2021, I want to make sure we're checking that list off, like that, those things are getting done. And, that's really about it, because you do a great job presenting, during transportation. So none of this is like a surprise. And that's the good part about it, that you do check in with us regularly and give us details about all of our projects. Anytime I call you for a meeting, you are happy to meet with me about the smallest of details. So it has been a joy. And so I hope that you take these, not criticisms, but you take these conversations, these asks, for what they really are. It is that we need to get this stuff done. And I know that we can, because, we have the leadership in place to do it. So mine is not so much a question as it is here to Jennifer, to our Chair Ide, and all of the other council members that are truly trying to make sure that we do the most basic of needs for our constituents, do them properly, and we can hold our heads up real high. So thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. And we have a meeting scheduled. We can go over your traffic control items then as well.
Yes, we do. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Overstreet. All right, we're going to go to Shook and then Councilmember Dickens.
All right, thank you. Well, I guess I'll throw in my bouquet into the shower here by saying I appreciate your attitude, your approach to the job, your willingness to come out on site and eyeball things for yourself, your ability, your appetite to look for other ways to do things, and sometimes to stray from the text to the catchism. So good for you. I'm actually a little surprised you're still here. So when do you anticipate the next infrastructure bond issue?
So what we've been focused on, Councilmember, is the T-SLOS 2.0, and right now we're developing the project list and targeting a May of 22 vote. The program ends collections April of next year. There's still a lot of work to be done on that, but we're actively working on project list development and working with the executive team to put a finer edge on that. But within the next 12 months, we're going to be making the push for these next 2.0 programs, as we're calling them.
All right. Speaking of snow and ice, the last big event we had was before this department was birthed. Who has responsibility for that now? Is it y'all or DPW?
We have responsibility for that, council member, and in fact, we do a series of practice runs during the summer and early fall. It was interesting this past year. We probably did 3 times the number of practices we normally do, simply because we were worried about COVID, and we had to adapt our typical approach for the pandemic. If you've ever been out to the North Avenue installation, you picture a elementary school lunchroom. Everything is being coordinated under one roof, and we realized real quickly we couldn't have all those people under one roof. So we worked to decentralize the operations on site and looking at how our fear was that if we had 2 storm events, we didn't want everyone to be sick for the second one. So that's our responsibility. That falls in the transportation infrastructure management team, and we also have just an excellent representative who leads our emergency preparedness efforts.
All right. Well, word of the wise, you need to work closely with APS, because if you don't get those bus routes clear, an APS will suspend operations at the drop of a hat for a week. And so if the kids don't go to school, mom and dad don't go to work. So it's important to work with them and be advised, as all district council members, well, as we all know, that map they're going to send you is not necessarily how the bus drivers put it together. But I would just ask you to keep. Do you have management experience in snow and ice events?
So, sir, I actually have not experienced a snow and ice event. The team carries the expertise there. I've come at it more from an operational perspective, with an extra set of eyes looking at the routes and the priorities. And in fact, I was told in the first briefing that my responsibility is policy. And when I was pressed further to see what that was, basically I approved the invoices. My first dry run was about 2 years ago, and it was a very fluid operation. And I think in many cases, I need to learn to help make things better, and then stay out of the way and let the team operate. They've got this down.
All right. Well, the city's number one response to a snow and ice event is to pray that temperatures climb back up to around 55 the next day. The problem has been kind of our plan B. So, and hopefully we won't be needing to put you all to the test. Regarding sidewalks, I know you were open to looking at ways to make the application of the dreaded Home Depot test a little easier to swallow. That is what it takes the private sector to pour 100 feet of sidewalk compared to the city. Have you had any success?
So, no, sir. We did some evaluation on the pricing that at our current levels of productivity, we would be about the same price, if not a little more expensive than the contractors. But what we're going to look more closely at are the sections of roadway that already have curb and gutter, and we own the right of way. The challenge that we get into in many cases is the topography. We're not wall builders, and if we have to coordinate the utility relocation, we'd rather put that on a contractor. But I have seen some stretches of sidewalk recently that I believe we're fully capable of building, because it's essentially scoop out the dirt, form it, pour it, and then dress it back. And so those are the types of areas that I believe in the near term we can be taking control of. Some of the sidewalks in your district are actually pretty challenging with the topography that comes into play.
No, I know it's the retaining walls really can drive those costs, but
it's really a wall project that happens to have sidewalks.
Yeah, I've always been baffled by the investment we seem to be required to make in terms of planning. I mean, to me, it's you drop your forms and pour your concrete. Can we maybe get away from some of these detailed drawings all the time?
So, especially when it comes to sidewalk gaps, generally speaking, you can kind of work those out as you go. The bigger bigger corridors with the coordination with the driveways, and where the consultants oftentimes needed is with determining what right-of-way we need. But I would also share that our planning and strategy team, we poached a pretty strong player from the private consulting world for the purpose of building up our in-house design capabilities. So we're moving in that direction.
All right, last topic. When warrants are not met for a traffic control device, just speed hump most commonly, engineers who are kind of by nature tend to be very focused on the task at hand, and their peripheral vision may be a little lacking. Then that poses the obvious sort of follow-up question, which is, okay, obviously a study was asked for because there's concerns about speeding on the street. If the warrant wasn't met, is it going to kill somebody to come back and say, so here's a menu of other things. We can do striping along the curb. We can put down little reflectors. Maybe install a radar sign. You see, because when I get a failed warrants thing, then all I got to do is I got to go back to the engineer and say, okay, failed warrants. I appreciate that. But now what? What are your thoughts on that? And how cheap are radar signs and how available are they? Because they do seem to work.
So you make a good point. One of the things I had actually mentioned in Transportation Committee Wednesday was that there's a void within our team when it comes to the management of, I'm calling it the council community interface. And I think this is an excellent example. Speeding on a road, speed table is requested, and it's not warranted, and it just kind of dies. I don't think that's the best way to handle these situations. We're working to put in place people who can come look at these and start working with the technical teams to really evaluate what the issue is. To your point that, we don't just want to say no and walk away. There are oftentimes things that we can do that will provide some relief to the problem. Even looking at things, if you've watched us in the past year, the creative use of our temporary barricades, we're looking at other ways that we could throttle the traffic with those. But it's becoming a more collaborative process, and we're going to be putting more resources in, Councilmember, to talk about, let's look at what the issues are and assess the problems before you even go through the frustration of getting a study and finding out it's not warranted. Because even if it's not warranted, we can still have the conversation to say, well, but is within our engineering judgment, is this the best thing to do here? So we want to have those conversations. It's not just a binary yes-no kind of decision tree.
No, whether a speed hump's approved or not isn't the problem, right? The problem is how do we calm traffic. But what about radar signs, real quick?
So yeah, radar signs, studies are showing that they work really well when they're initially installed. If drivers will react to change, and something that has changed in the roadway will get their attention, over time that they just get kind of, their senses get dulled to those radar signs. We had actually talked about would it be worth looking at some of the portable signs that could change location. There is the initial benefit. I think over time the benefit's residual, but it's still a tool that we have in the toolbox to use.
Okay, well, maybe it's worth looking into to see if every council district, could have a couple of portable signs in your bullpen to be moved around. Because I get it, if you look at the same thing every day and there's no consequences attached, over time it's going to wear off. But I would invite you to think about that. All right, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilmember Shook. I believe that Councilmember Dickens was next up.
Yes. Thank you, Chair Hyde. Thank you, Commissioner Rowan, for this presentation. You and I talk a lot, so most of this is known to me, so glad it's consistent. I did have a couple of questions that I wanted to make sure we elevated. So it's fantastic. We're getting a safety director. We've never had that before, to my knowledge. So the question was asked to me, is that safety director also going to do the safe routes to school work, or is there somebody else that's going to do that?
So no, sir. The safe routes to school is going to be a separate position that we've also budgeted for.
Excellent. Good. And how soon will we have the safety director? Is this just a FY22, or are you already in the process of trying to recruit?
It'll be an FY22 effort. Once the personnel paper is approved, we'll start recruiting for that position.
Okay. And the other thing is, with the 78 funded vacancies, how are we filling those? I mean, what challenges are you having in that placement?
It's the thing for us is there's just a general shortage in the construction industry, and find a lot of those positions are on the operations and maintenance side, and so it gets harder and harder to find things like good equipment operators. One of the things, I think it ties back into the training that we talked about, is implementing a model where essentially we target entry-level hires and then train them once they get here. We've often joked, and I actually think there's some truth to it, that the person who's been in construction for 30 years has just repeated the same 3 years of experience 10 times. Because by the time you get to about that third year, you've seen and experienced a lot and are really a productive member of the team and ready to advance. And so those are some of the things we're going to talk about. I know we have some technical positions we're looking for, some director level positions that we've kind of been targeting people in advance to see if they're interested in joining us. So a little internal headhunting going on. But so it's from the construction side, we struggle a little bit with that shortage. It's a great industry and great opportunities, and we're willing to take the risk to bring people in who just have good attitudes and want to learn. And then we have some professional positions that we think are going to be real impact players, and we're trying to be thoughtful about who we bring on board for those as well.
Okay. All right. Well, good. So, let's sit down and talk about these entry-level positions again and get some energy around them for starting folks and then training them. I think we need to put a serious amount of intentionality behind it, or else it'll continue to be the case that this industry is one where we don't grow our own talent. But I believe we can grow a considerable portion of our talent, and we have to just start there. And then you got to pay them enough to retain them, because the private sector plucks people from operations a lot. So let's see, let's put a roadmap together for that. And I agree with Councilmember Overstreet. You are the best Atlanta DOT commissioner we've ever had. So,
and longest serving.
And the longest serving. So thank you. We appreciate it. That concludes my questions for now. Thank you, Chair I.
Thank you, Mr. Dickens. Colleagues, anybody else send me a text real quick if you have questions for the commissioner. And while I'm waiting to see if anybody has a last minute question, you may have touched on this, but how are you feeling on TSPLOS collections for our current TSPLOS list and the timing of those projects? You feeling okay?
So I don't want to jinx myself, Madam Chair. I feel really good about it. A year ago at this time, we saw the collections cut in half for a 2-month period, and I'm not going to lie, I was chewing my nails a little bit over that one. It had slowly recovered, and I believe if you look at April, we were over 5 million. That's back to pre-COVID levels. So what we had told people, when you do the math, any monthly collection that starts with a 4 point something million, we're fine to the finish line. So to see that we've hit 5 in the month of April is very positive. So I feel really good about where we stand.
Okay, and for the remainder of that work, do we have all the contracts in place that we will use for those projects, or are we going to have, procurement to do for some of those projects still?
So for the design, most of that is accounted for. We had a challenge with our on-call A&E contract where I had to cancel it, and that's going to be rebid to get our professional services back in. We need to look at extending our program manager. They're doing an excellent job for us, and we'll need those type services. And then the bigger projects, each one of those will be procured separately. So there's a lot of procurement on the horizon for Atlanta DOT.
Okay, and you probably know where I'm coming from, having a big project that's on the, late side of.
You have your designer. They're working on it, and really the big thing for you is to get this design finished, and then procurement starts, and hopefully you'll be the beneficiary of a lot of the optimization work we're doing to streamline that process.
All right, that's great to hear. Mr. Schiff just messaged me that he does have a follow-up. That I think that these portable, I've done a couple out of my district council funds of the Your Speed Is signs. I do think they get people's attention in the beginning. That was a little bit of a procurement headache. So I hope that we have a contract in place. Our signed contracts are better, but can you follow up with us offline and give us an estimate of, let us know what those currently cost and what the ones that are portable would currently cost? Because having those rotate, around the city, or having a couple for each district that we can move around the hotspots, I think is something that council's interested in.
Yes, and one thing to keep in mind too on kind of the portable nature, not to suddenly create demand, but we have acquired in this past year some variable message boards. So if we needed to go put a slow down message out there, Councilmember Shook says slow down kind of a thing.
Oh, yeah, it's sort of like the road construction ones or the event ones that I think I've seen those on Monroe every once in a while too. We would love the info on that as well. All right, well, if there is, I'm not hearing from anybody else, so we're going to end a little bit early then, and we are going to, let me tell everybody what's coming. Give everybody a minute to have lunch, and then we are going to come back at 12:30 with the Department of Watershed Management and 1:30 with Department of Customer Service ATL 311. So the line's going to go quiet for the next 26 minutes. And colleagues, if you'll log back in a few minutes before 12:30, that would be great. So thank you so much, Commissioner Rowan. I think you have your list of things to follow back up on, but we will send you an email with those items as well. All right, thank you so much. All right, bye-bye. Your mask.
A native son of Atlanta, C.T. Martin was educated in Atlanta public schools, graduating from Booker T. Washington High School. Martin would attend Shaw University in North Carolina before returning home to earn a master's degree from Atlanta University. Martin was quick to answer the call to community service. The years 1979 through 1981 were dark and troubling times in the city, and a young C.T. Martin stepped forward to serve on the Missing and Murdered Children's Task Force. In 1990, Martin's activism led him to City Hall as he was elected to Atlanta City Council, representing the city's 10th district for the first time. It was the beginning of one of the longest tenures on record for a council representative. Martin served on the City Budget Commission and chaired committees for human resources, public safety, and transportation. His passion for economic development in his district led to the formation of the Martin Luther King Jr. Drive Merchants Association. The ongoing reimagining of the MLK corridor is part of Martin's legacy. C.T. Martin left City Council in 2017, the same year that the $27 million Natatorium and Recreation Center in the Adamsville community was renamed in his honor. It is an enduring symbol of C.T. Martin's commitment to the youth as well as the seniors of the 10th District. C.T. Martin passed away May 8th at the age of 84. He will be remembered as an activist, visionary, and mentor, but most of all, C.T. Martin will be remembered as the Dean of Atlanta City Council.
We're here today at the Maggie Russell Tower to help to provide, along with our partners GenCare and their Executive Director, Councilwoman Carmelita Gum from South Fulton, 80 COVID-19 vaccines for seniors who are here in the building. There are over 400 residences in the Maggie Russell high-rise, but there are about 80 folks who had not received their COVID-19 vaccines. So a lot of the seniors, aren't mobile, meaning they may not have a car or access to transportation, to help them to get vaccinated, to protect them and others who already have been vaccinated in the building from the scourge of COVID-19. It is still important to adhere to the CDC guidelines so that we can beat this pandemic. We are so close to the end of it. Millions of adult Americans have been vaccinated, but we need every American to step up, get a shot in the arm, because it protects yourself, it protects others, it protects our community. The city of Atlanta is still in phase 2. We would like to open up. We can't do so until we have the results in the broader community that our infection rate is beneath 5%, that people are still wearing masks and socially distancing, that everybody is getting vaccinated. The more we do that, the quicker we can go back to normal.
One, two, three, cut.
Hooray! This is called Centennial Yards, formerly the Gulch. And of course, this whole development was passed in 2018 by the Atlanta City Council. So this is one of the first pieces of development. There's about 15 different parcels that will eventually be developed over the next 10 to 15